Hi, I'm Neil, and in today's video I'm going to be answering questions which have been sent in to me on my Instagram. So a big thank you to everyone who sent in questions. I haven't done a Q&A video for a long time now, so I thought it was about time that I put that right. So let's crack on. So the first question is a very bizarre and weird one. If you had to shoot a wedding with only one lens, either the 45mm tilt shift or a 135, which would you choose? So as I say, it's the first question and it's a really weird one and it's a horrible one, sort of stuff that gives you nightmares. I think if I literally only had those two lenses to hand, I mean, firstly I'm going to be kicking myself for packing my bag like an absolute idiot, but if I did only have those two lenses, I would have to choose the 45mm tilt shift. I know it's a manual focus lens, which is going to make it really tricky to use, but there's just no way I could shoot a whole wedding day on a 135mm. For me, and the way that I like to work, that's just far too long a focal length. I'd have to be so physically far away that the shots that I get just wouldn't really have any meaningful emotional impact. Now, even if the tilt shift shots were out of focus, and if I'm using it, a lot of them are going to be out of focus, I still think that they would end up having more emotional impact purely for the fact that I'm closer. So yeah, the 45mm tilt shift would be my choice. But Nick, thank you for sending the question, but if I end up having nightmares about that, because that's how I pack my bag, I'm gonna blame you for that. So next question, 5 years from now, do you see yourself as an educator or as a wedding photographer? That's an excellent question, and I quite like the fact somebody's asked that. I never really plan that far ahead. I prefer just to concentrate on whatever I'm enjoying doing at the present time, to be honest. I'm very lucky that even though I've been photographing weddings for 15 years now, I still love and enjoy them just as much as I always have. So whilst that is the case, and more importantly, whilst couples still enjoy my work enough to book me, I can't see me wanting to stop photographing weddings for a very long time yet. But having said that, I do love helping other photographers, and with my workshops, I find it genuinely so rewarding to see other photographers growing in confidence and leaving the workshops hopefully feeling inspired. I also think that both sides of what I do, the wedding photography and the workshops, support each other really well. The workshops definitely help me improve as a photographer, which I like to think I then take into my real weddings, into my wedding photography. But equally, by shooting weddings regularly, I feel as though I can relate much better to everyone who comes on the workshops rather than just being somebody who just does workshops. And I also think that having the contrast of doing both regularly is really good, and it's a nice variation for me. So for the time being, whilst I'm hopefully still fit enough, because weddings are really hard work and you do need to be quite fit, I'm just not going to overthink anything. I'm just going to carry on as I am. But thank you very much for the question. It's a really interesting one. I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. And next question, I would like to start using MagMod modifiers. If I were to buy just one to get started, which would you recommend? So thank you very much for the question. Now, if you have been a follower of my channel, you'll know just how much I love MagMod modifiers. You'll see me use them all the time, especially my how I shot this videos. I've used them for years now, and I literally wouldn't be able to create the off-camera flash images which I do without MagMod. And I was so proud recently when they asked me to become an ambassador for them, because they are a brand that I really believe in and I genuinely love. So that was and is a really massive honour, so thank you MagMod for asking me. I think I own all the modifiers which MagMod produce. Did say I was a bit of a fan. But if I was forced to only recommend one just to get you started, then I would choose the Mag Grid. The difference between a good off-camera flash photograph and one that really doesn't work so well, in my opinion anyway, is often due to how well we control the spread of the light that is coming out of our flash, and that is where the grid is so useful. You can zoom your flash in all you like, but it still won't be anywhere near as effective as using a grid, when it comes to limiting the spill of the light. So I think that the grids are a great starting point, but just be warned that MagMod stuff is really addictive. So you may well soon find that you're going to be wanting more, and you're going to want the gels and the snoops and all sorts, because they just really help with off-camera flash work. Having said that, if you do buy anything from MagMod's website, I'm very pleased to say that you can now use the discount code Redfern and you will save some money. So yeah, to answer your question, the grid I think is the best place to start off. It's so good at limiting the spill of that light. So next question, do you shoot all your wedding images as RAW files or JPEGs? So now that I'm shooting with Sony cameras, I actually shoot in both RAW and JPEG, but the only one reason for this is because the embedded JPEG file in Sony cameras is very small. So when I'm culling in Photo Mechanic, I can't really zoom in very far if I don't shoot a large JPEG alongside that. And that can just make culling quite difficult. So that's the reason that I also save large JPEG files as well. So basically just to make culling easier. But I only edit from the RAW files. And when I was shooting with Nikon DSLRs, I only ever shot in RAW. So for all intents and purposes, yeah, I only really shoot in RAW. The JPEGs, I said, just help with culling. Okay, so what is the maximum ISO that you would shoot at? Now, oddly enough, this is a question which I've been asked quite a few times now. My answer is always the same. I will just shoot at whatever ISO is necessary to give me a good exposure in the scenario that I'm in. This year, for example, I was lucky enough to photograph an amazing wedding in France. And even though the weather on the day was really nice, it was so hot. I don't think I've ever photographed a wedding in as hot of conditions as I did on this day. The bride and groom, Alice and Tom, got married in a really nice but very dark chapel. This shot, for example, was taken at f1.8 at 1/100th of a second at 5000 ISO. So that probably gives you an idea of just how dark it was. But the thing is, it just doesn't matter. It always seems to be us as photographers who seem to worry about shooting at high ISOs. I've never in all my years had a couple come back to me and say, oh, we love that photograph, it's a shame it's a little bit grainy. That just doesn't happen. So if the moment and the composition are there, it really doesn't matter. I say it's only us as photographers that seem to worry about getting a little bit of noise or grain into our images. Plus, cameras are so good at handling ISO these days that I don't think it's something which we really need to worry about at all. So yeah, just don't worry about it too much. Just always aim for moment and composition. And next question, what would be your advice for someone who wants to get into wedding photography? Wow, that's a huge question, and it's one that I really just need to make a whole dedicated video on it. So let me know if you'd like me to do that. But just to get the ball rolling, I would say on the shooting side, because there's two very different aspects to wedding photography business. You've got the shooting and you've got the business. So on the shooting side, I think my biggest tip would be to go out with your camera and shoot as often as you can. I've mentioned this before in videos, but the more that we shoot, the better we will become as photographers. So it's really vital that you go out with your camera and you practice as much as you can. That's going to be the best way to improve. I try and do this too. Even though I've been so busy with this year with weddings and with my workshops, I've still organised shoots just for myself, just for fun, so that I can practice and try out new things. Most importantly, because I then have no pressure when I do that. The photographs which you're actually looking at now were all taken by me just for fun, just to practice. And on the business side, I would say that getting to know other wedding suppliers, whether that be other photographers, videographers, venues, bridal shops, florists, makeup artists, the list just goes on, is really important when you're just starting out. Building your own network of supplier friends can help you so many ways. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that you try to get to know as many as your local wedding suppliers and meet up with them and just become friends with them as you can, because you'll find that will really help you and your business. Will I be upgrading to the Sony A9II? Now, this is a question which I've been asked a lot recently, and my answer in a word is no. At least not for a long time anyway. I've no doubt that it will be an unbelievable camera, but the A9 is already an amazing camera for me, and especially after the recent firmware updates, it's now even better. To be honest though, were it not for the firmware updates, especially the introduction of real-time tracking, which is just crazy good, and at last the ability to now change the focus point colour to either red or white rather than the grey that was so frustrating in the past, then I would have considered upgrading, but I really just don't see the need to upgrade now. So hats off to Sony for giving existing A9 users such fantastic firmware updates and not keeping all the good stuff back, like the real-time tracking for the A9II. It really has surprised me that they did that, because that, I think, will really have an impact on the people who are going to upgrade. And say, I would have been tempted, but now I'm not. So fair play to Sony. That's the reason that I'm not looking to upgrade for a long time yet. Next question. You can shoot only on your first ever DSLR or your current Sony camera, but the Sony shoots film. Oh, that's a horrible question. I'm guessing that Nick has asked that because he's seen how difficult it was when I used my first ever DSLR, a Nikon D70, at a recent wedding, and there is a video on my channel which I will link to up here, where you can see the behind the scenes of that wedding, how I got on using that camera, because I did find it a real struggle. So it's really tricky, because on the one hand, obviously I've got my DSLR and I don't have to be worried about how many shots I'm taking, but on the other, I'm going to be using a camera that is really limiting. So because of that, I would still choose the Sony A9, even if it was taking film. As I say, I know I'd miss out on not being able to take as many shots that I would like, or as I'm used to, but at the same time, I still feel that the shots which I do take will be so much more better and more creative than the D70 images would be. I think the main worry though would just be explaining to the bride and groom after the wedding, even if they were the best shots in the world, why I was only delivering 30 photographs from their wedding. That's going to be an awkward conversation. And last but not least, and this is a big one, does pineapple belong on a pizza? That's the easiest question of the video. Yes, pineapple is one of the best fruits. It should be on most things by law. It's one of just the best fruits, not just pizza. Put it on everything. So a huge thank you to everyone who sent in questions for this video. I really appreciate it, and apologies if I didn't get round to including your question. I just had so many sent in to me, so I'm very sorry if I didn't manage to include yours. If you have any questions which you would like me to answer in my next Q&A video, which I promise won't be as long a gap as this one was, please put any questions you may want to ask in the comment section and I will answer them in the next video. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. Maybe you were interested in whether I like pineapple on my pizza. Who knows? So thank you very much again for watching, and I will see you next time.